Welcome everyone to this week's Fish Friday. This week we'll be talking about a living fossil, basically a living dinosaur, the alligator gar, or if you're interested in scientific name, Atractoscius spatula. Spatula. Interesting name. But here are some interesting pictures if you do not know what they like or what they look like. Pretty freaking looking fish. Pretty freaky looking fish. But as I said, these are living fossils. And what I mean by that is the fossil records of these fish go back a little over 200 million years. And when scientists say that the fossil records of a species go back this far or that far, that means that basically it's not the same species all the time that lived 200 million years ago, but they haven't changed much. These fish basically have the same characteristics that they did 200 million years ago that they do today. They just haven't really changed. As you can see, they have a really broad snout. And it's very obvious they have pretty sharp teeth in there. You can even see when it's closed. That's a little more difficult to see, but that's a good picture. For my next actual part, one of the easiest ways to identify this fish compared to other gars, if you can get the jaw open, it actually has 2 rows of teeth on the upper jaw, with only 1 row on the bottom. Most of the gar species only have 1 row, your normal teeth sort of style bite. 1 row here and then 1 row on top. These actually have that 2 rows of teeth. It's very easy to identify if you can get the jaw open. As you can see, they are very cylindrical. I like to say that they are cigar shaped. Most of your bigger gar are going to be about 6 feet long, or 2 meters for my European friends, and about 100 pounds or about 45 kilograms. However, there are anecdotal records that they have gotten up to 10 feet long or 3 meters long and about 350 pounds, which is 155 kilograms. 10 feet is 3 meters. That's a big fish. Your bigger ones today might reach 8 feet long, somewhere around in there. But one of the real interesting things about this fish is those 6 feet, 8 feet long fish, some of them have been found to be 60, 70, or 80 years old. Really, really long-lived fish. If you notice in these pictures, they kind of look like they have a different kind of scale type than what you might be used to. Let's look at this picture. They look, kind of diamondish. Just got a real odd pattern to them. And that is because these fish actually have ganoid scales. These scales are not your overlapping normal fish scales. They are actually hooked into each other through an internal structure. These are incredibly tough scales. It actually has the inner layer of the scale, so the part closer to the skin is actual bone. So these are actually in a bone sheath, and the outer layer of these scales is made from a material or a chemical named ganoin, which would be similar to enamel on our teeth. So if you think about it, it's got an inner layer of bone and an outer layer of enamel, and that's what its scales are made out of. One interesting fact about these scales is that Native Americans actually used them for arrowheads and used the skin for shields. Then that was made from the scales. That's how tough and resilient these scales are. They are euryhaline type of species, which means that they can be in very broad differences in salinities, meaning that they can live in salt water just fine and they can live in fresh water just fine. Good morning, Quentin. They are piscivorous, meaning that they eat mainly fish, um, but they will take small waterfowl, so small ducks, small geese, small mammals. So, like if a squirrel falls into the river, they'll definitely eat that. And they eat a few turtles in there, but they're mainly piscivorous. Um, Another interesting fact that a lot of people know about them, I'll get to that in a minute, Junior. An interesting fact about these that a lot of people know is they actually both breathe both air and water. Um, it was thought for a while that they would breathe air when the water was bad, but it turns out that these alligator gar can actually drown. Can you imagine that? A fish that can drown. There was a scientific study done where the gars just kept dying, and it was because they had them in an enclosed water tank with no air pockets, and it turns out that they drowned. Let's see. They have a heterocircle tail, which means that's a hard picture, but the top part of the tail actually extends out into the fin. It's kind of, think of like a shark tail. So think of like a shark tail, but then they still have the fin right there. The reason why they have this is they are ambush predators. They are normally very sluggish, very slow moving fish. And they just sit there, and then they see something they want to eat, and they just put on a massive burst of speed and grab it. That's why they have all those small teeth. It's not to get anything big, it's to grab a hold of something and not let go. As I said previously, they are long lived. 60 years old, that's not uncommon. Most females of this species don't even sexually mature until after 10 years. When you think of most of your other fish species, you're talking the females are going to be sexually mature the next year or 2 years after they hatch from their eggs. Really, really late. Which kind of goes into their spawning conditions. When these fish want to spawn, there's a lot of factors that have to be taken into play. It's not just, it's that time of year, let's go. They do need the longer days and the warmer water. So you're talking about the late springs that, all the birds and the bees and all the animals just are making happy, and storks are flying everywhere. But actually, the most important thing about these fish is they must have a flood happen to spawn. It can't just be the time. It has to be a flood happening at that time. And the reason why is they go up into the vegetation of the flooded area to spawn. And the female will lay his eggs, and we'll just go ahead and talk about their spawning habits. The female will get in a spot that she thinks her eggs will be good. They will survive. And then 5 or 6 males just come around and they're just swarming her. It's like a girl up in the club that has a crop top. She is getting mauled by 6, 7 males. Well, she lays her eggs, and then they do their stuff over the eggs, and it sits on the vegetation. The eggs hatch in about 48 hours, and then the larva will finish off the yolk reserves and then float around as small fish. Now, to answer the question that I am sure is on many people's minds, and I know is on Junior's mind up in the chat, no, there has never been a documented attack by a alligator gar on people. Most of the time, people do get hurt when they're dealing with this fish because those scales actually have a serrated edge. And if you grab a hold of this fish and it twitches the wrong way, it will. And I know this from experience. This is not anecdotal. Oh, I heard this. No, I know this from experience. If they twitch and you have a hold of that fish, it will slice your arms apart. It hurts bad. When you do get this fish, you basically have to use 10 snips or a metal cutter to cut through these scales in any sort of way to harvest meat. Most of your recreation activities on this is going to be bow fishing, when they're being much more protected than they have been previously. For a long time, these were considered a trash fish, which actually put the alligator gar populations in danger. So the populations have rebounded successfully, but it's taking a lot of work. So that's the alligator gar, people. Thank you guys so much for stopping in. I really appreciate it, and I hope you liked this YouTube video. If you did, please give a like, comment, and subscribe. I hope to see you next week. If you want to see a fish, please put it in the comments below, and we'll get to it. We are going to do a freshwater fish one week, and then a saltwater fish the next week. So next week, who knows what we're going to go to? But it'll be saltwater. But thank you guys so much again, and please be safe out there. Peace.